Pregnant, she found out he had a child with his ex. She left him, revealed her real identity, and married a CEO he begged too late. Hi, my beautiful family. It's your Mr. Peter. If this is your first time here, let me say, you're not just welcome, you're wanted, you're home. This space is built with love, and every word is meant to hold you gently. Before we begin, I have a prayer for you. Soft, strong, and born from love. May light rise within you, even when the day feels dark. May the joy you forgot return in unexpected ways. May every lonely corner of your soul feel seen, and may love walk beside you, steady, kind, and true. I pray your burdens grow lighter, that your dreams breathe again, and that deep in your spirit you know that you are not alone. You are loved, wildly, eternally, completely. To my beloved family in the United States, Happy Independence Day. I see your joy, your celebrations, your history. And though this story goes live on July 5th, I wrote it on the 4th, with a heart full of respect and love. Forgive me if I arrive a day late, but I never forget you. Also, please say a prayer for Binta. She's been my strength behind the scenes, quiet, loving, powerful, but she needs your love too. Whisper her name tonight. She'll feel it. And now, my beautiful family, old and new, please don't leave this story in the middle. Every word was written with meaning. Stay with me, let it touch you. And when the story ends, please rate it out of 10, not for numbers, but because your voice matters. And if you don't, I'll quietly mind, because I love you. Like this video, leave a kind word, share it with someone who needs light today. Let's show the world what real family looks like, faithful, soulful, and forever full of love. Let's begin. With all my love, always. Would you like a special community post written to celebrate Independence Day too, just for your USA audience? I can create that as well.
I never loved you, Hannah. You were just convenient until I could get back what was really mine. Those words, spoken in Raymond Rico's voice, hit Hannah James like a physical blow as she stood frozen outside their bedroom door. She had come home early from her doctor's appointment, excited to share the news that their baby was a healthy girl, only to hear her husband of 8 months talking on the phone with someone else. "Aria, darling, you know you're the only woman I've ever truly loved," Raymond continued, his voice tender in a way it had never been with Hannah. "This situation with Hannah is temporary. Once the baby is born and I figure out her financial situation, we can finally be together properly. You and River deserve so much better than these stolen moments." Hannah's hand instinctively moved to her 6-month pregnant belly, her pulse racing so intensely she thought it might wake the baby. River? Who was River? And Aria? Wasn't that the name of Raymond's ex-wife, the one he claimed he never spoke to anymore? "I miss you too, sweetheart. I know it's been hard hiding our relationship, but Hannah is so naive. She actually believes I married her for love." Raymond's cruel laugh made Hannah's blood run cold. Can you imagine? A waitress thinking she could keep a man like me satisfied. The only reason I haven't left her yet is because I suspect her family has money hidden somewhere. Her grandfather left her something, and I need to find out what before I make my move. Hannah pressed her back against the hallway wall, tears streaming down her face. The irony was devastating. Raymond was right about her family's money, but he had no idea just how wrong he was about everything else. She wasn't just a waitress who'd inherited a small nest egg. She was the sole heiress to James Industries, an empire worth over $3 billion. She'd been living undercover, working ordinary jobs for the past 5 years because she'd wanted to find someone who would love her for herself, not her fortune. And instead, she'd found a man who was using her while planning to return to his ex-wife. "River misses his daddy," Aria's voice came through the phone, and Hannah realized Raymond had put the call on speaker. "When are you coming to see us again?" It's been 2 weeks, and he keeps asking when you're going to take us to that beach house like you promised. This weekend, baby. I'll tell Hannah I have a business conference. She's so trusting she'll never question it. Raymond's voice was filled with an affection that Hannah had never heard directed toward her. And I've been looking at rings, Arya. Real rings this time, not like that cheap thing I gave Hannah to keep her happy. You deserve diamonds, princess. Hannah looked down at her simple wedding band. The one Raymond had claimed was perfect for her simple taste. She'd loved it because she thought it represented their genuine, uncomplicated love. Now she realized it was just another symbol of how little she meant to him. I can't wait to be your real wife again, Arya said, her voice dreamy. To have our family complete. River needs his father, and I need my husband back. I know we made mistakes when we divorced, but this time will be different. It will be perfect, Raymond agreed. Hannah was never supposed to be permanent. She was just practice, a way to learn how to be a better husband for you. And if she does have family money, like I suspect, well, that'll just make the divorce settlement more interesting. The baby kicked hard against Hannah's ribs, as if sensing her mother's distress. Hannah bit her lip to keep from crying out, both from the physical pain and the emotional devastation. She'd been so careful, so cautious about revealing her true identity. She'd wanted to make sure Raymond loved her completely before she told him the truth about her wealth. She'd planned to surprise him on their first anniversary. Instead, she'd discovered that he'd been planning to leave her all along. I should go, Raymond said suddenly. Hannah will be home soon from her doctor's appointment. The woman asks so many questions about where I go and what I do. It's exhausting pretending to care about her boring little life. Be careful, my love, Arya purred. I know it's hard playing house with her, but soon we'll have everything we want. I've been looking at houses in the hills, somewhere River can have a big yard and we can have the life we always dreamed of. Soon, darling, I promise. I love you both so much. We love you too, Daddy, came a small voice. River, the child Hannah hadn't even known existed. The line went dead and Hannah heard Raymond moving around their bedroom. She quietly made her way back to the front door, her mind racing. She needed to process what she'd just heard, needed to figure out her next move. But first, she had to pretend everything was normal. Taking a shaky breath, Hannah opened and closed the front door loudly, calling out, Raymond, honey, I'm home. Hey, babe. Raymond's voice was warm and loving as he came down the stairs, the same voice that had just been making plans to abandon her. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her forehead, his hand resting on her belly. How did the appointment go? Is our little one healthy? Hannah looked up at the man she'd thought was the love of her life, seeing him clearly for the first time. His smile was perfect, his green eyes warm with what she'd believed was love. Now she knew it was all an act. Every kiss, every tender moment, every whispered, I love you, had been a lie designed to keep her compliant while he planned his real future with someone else. Everything's perfect, Hannah managed to say, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. The baby is healthy and growing well. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Raymond's hand moved in gentle circles on her belly, and Hannah had to resist the urge to push him away. I was thinking, I might need to go out of town this weekend. There's a conference in San Francisco that could be really good for my career. Another lie. He was going to see Arya and River, to play happy family while his pregnant wife sat at home alone. Of course, Hannah said, forcing a smile. You should go. It sounds like a great opportunity. Raymond beamed at her, probably thrilled that his deception was working so easily. You're the best wife a man could ask for, Hannah. So understanding, so supportive. As he hugged her again, Hannah closed her eyes and let herself feel the full weight of his betrayal. But underneath the pain, something else was growing, a cold, calculating anger. Raymond had played her for a fool, but he had no idea who he was really dealing with. Hannah James had spent years learning to be an ordinary woman, but she'd been born a queen. And it was time Raymond Rico learned the difference. That night, as Raymond slept beside her, Hannah lay awake planning. She had resources he couldn't imagine, connections he'd never dream of, and a fortune that would make his head spin. He thought he was playing games with a naive waitress, but he was about to discover he'd declared war on an empire. The baby kicked again, and Hannah placed her hand protectively over her belly. Her daughter, because she decided not to share that detail with Raymond, would never know a world where men could lie and manipulate without consequences. Tomorrow, Hannah James would begin her transformation back into who she really was. And Raymond Rico would learn that some games come with a price too high to pay. Chapter 2. The Double Life Exposed. Daddy, when is the fake mommy going away so we can all live together like a real family? Hannah's blood turned to ice as she watched 4-year-old River Rico ask his father this innocent question while they sat together at an upscale beachfront restaurant. She was parked across the street, 7 months pregnant now, watching through binoculars as her husband played happy family with his ex-wife Aria and their son. It had been 3 weeks since she'd overheard that devastating phone call, and Hannah had spent every moment since then gathering evidence of Raymond's betrayal. What she'd discovered was worse than anything she could have imagined. Raymond kissed River's forehead tenderly. "Soon, buddy. Very soon. Daddy just needs to take care of some business first, and then we'll all be together forever." Aria, a stunning redhead with emerald eyes, leaned across the table and took Raymond's hand. "I'm scared, Ray. What if she finds out about us? What if she tries to keep you from River?" "She won't," Raymond said confidently, his voice carrying clearly through the restaurant's open windows. "Hannah is too naive, too trusting. She actually believes our marriage is real. Can you imagine being that pathetic?" Hannah's hands tightened on the binoculars. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd hired a private investigator, using her real identity and resources for the first time in years. What he'd uncovered had shattered her world completely. Raymond and Aria had never really divorced. Oh, the papers existed, filed 2 years ago, but they'd continued their relationship throughout the entire process. The business trips Raymond took monthly weren't business at all. They were romantic getaways to a beach house he'd rented under a false name, where he played husband and father to his real family. The investigator had photos. Raymond teaching River to swim while Aria watched lovingly from the beach. Raymond and Aria kissing passionately in the surf. The 3 of them building sandcastles together, looking like the perfect family. All while Hannah sat at home, believing her husband was working hard to build their future together. But the most devastating discovery had come just yesterday. Aria was pregnant again, 4 months along, and Raymond was over the moon about it. "I can't wait to meet our new baby," Aria said now, her hand resting on her barely visible bump. "River is so excited to be a big brother. 2 children with the woman I actually love," Raymond said, his voice filled with joy Hannah had never heard when he talked about their baby. "It's everything I ever wanted, Aria. Our real family, complete at last." River bounced in his seat. "Daddy, will the new baby like the beach house? Can we take them swimming like you taught me?" "Of course, son. We'll teach the baby everything together. All 3 of us, just like it should be." Hannah felt sick. While she'd been excitedly planning their nursery, buying baby clothes, and dreaming about their future together, Raymond had been living a completely separate life. A life where she didn't exist, where their unborn daughter didn't matter, where everything real and meaningful happened without her. The private investigator had found the beach house rental agreement, signed for another full year, with both Raymond and Aria's names on it. He'd found credit card statements showing expensive jewelry purchases that Hannah had never received, romantic dinner reservations for 2 that didn't include her, and even a savings account labeled Our Future Home that Raymond was funding with money he claimed he was saving for Hannah's baby. I have something for you, Raymond said now, pulling out a jewelry box. Hannah watched in horror as he presented Arya with a stunning diamond necklace. For the most beautiful woman in the world. Oh, Ray, it's gorgeous. Arya threw her arms around him and they kissed deeply while River giggled. When can we go shopping for the new baby? Arya asked, touching her belly. I want everything to be perfect this time. This weekend, Raymond promised. I'll tell Hannah I have another business conference. We can pick out everything together. Cribs, clothes, toys, whatever our baby needs. Hannah had heard enough. More than enough. She started her car, her mind crystal clear for the first time in weeks. She'd spent 3 weeks gathering evidence, and now she had everything she needed. Bank statements, photographs, rental agreements, travel records, all proof of Raymond's systematic betrayal of their marriage. But most importantly, she'd spent those 3 weeks reconnecting with who she really was. Hannah James, heiress to a fortune that dwarfed anything Raymond could imagine. She'd made contact with her family's legal team, her financial advisors, and her security personnel. They were all on standby, waiting for her signal. That signal would come tonight. Hannah drove home to their modest apartment, modest because she'd wanted to maintain her cover, while Raymond complained constantly about their poverty and dreamed of better things. If only he knew that she could buy him a mansion with her pocket change. She spent the afternoon preparing. First, she called her lawyer, James Whitmore, the senior partner at the most prestigious firm in the state. Ms. James, his voice was warm with genuine affection. I was wondering when you'd call. Are you ready to reclaim your position? More than ready, James. I need you to prepare divorce papers immediately, and I need them to be comprehensive. I understand. What grounds? Adultery, fraud, emotional abandonment. I have evidence of everything. Hannah's voice was cold, controlled. I want him to get nothing, James. Not a penny, not a possession, not even supervised visitation rights until paternity is established. Consider it done. Anything else? Yes. I want you to file an injunction preventing him from accessing any accounts he thinks are mine, and I want security footage from every property I own, just in case he tries to retaliate. Miss James, if I may, are you certain about this approach? Perhaps we could start with mediation. James, Hannah interrupted, her voice deadly quiet. This man has been living a double life throughout our entire marriage. He's planning to abandon me and our unborn child for his ex-wife and their children. Plural, she's pregnant again. There will be no mediation. There will be justice. Understood. The papers will be ready by morning. Next, Hannah called her security team and her private investigator. She wanted Raymond followed every moment until the divorce was finalized. She wanted to know every move he made, every lie he told, every promise he made to Arya that he was breaking to Hannah. Finally, she called her financial advisor and instructed him to freeze every account that Raymond had access to. Not that there were many. Hannah had been very careful about keeping her money separate, telling Raymond it was because she wanted to contribute equally to their marriage. As evening fell, Hannah sat in their living room, waiting. She'd prepared a simple dinner, set the table beautifully, and even lit candles. She wanted this last meal together to be perfect, because tomorrow Raymond Rico would discover that he'd been playing games with the wrong woman. When Raymond came home at 8 o'clock, he was glowing with happiness from his day with his real family. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing Hannah's cheek. "Something smells amazing." "I made your favorite," Hannah said sweetly. "I thought we could have a romantic dinner, just the two of us." "That's perfect, babe. I had such a stressful day at work. It'll be nice to relax with my gorgeous wife." Every word was a lie, and they both knew it. Though only Hannah knew that they both knew. Over dinner, Raymond regaled her with fictional stories about his demanding clients and difficult boss, while Hannah smiled and nodded, mentally cataloging every deception for her lawyer. When he mentioned his upcoming business trip to San Francisco, Hannah's smile remained perfectly steady. "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity," she said. "I hope you have a great time." "You're so understanding, Hannah. Some wives would complain about their husbands traveling so much, but you've always been supportive." "I just want you to be happy," Hannah said truthfully. And tomorrow she'd make sure he got exactly the kind of happiness he deserved. After dinner, as Raymond settled in to watch television, Hannah excused herself to take a bath. In the privacy of her bathroom, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what was coming. Tomorrow, her life would change completely. The quiet, simple existence she'd built would be over, and she'd return to the world of wealth and power she'd been born into. But tonight, for one last night, she was still just Hannah, the waitress, married to a man who thought he was clever enough to deceive her. Tomorrow, Raymond Rico would learn that he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, and Hannah James would make sure it was a lesson he never forgot. Chapter 3. The Confrontation and Revelation. Pack your bags, Raymond. You're about to lose everything you never knew you had. Hannah stood in the doorway of their bedroom at 6 a.m., fully dressed in an elegant black business suit that Raymond had never seen before, her hair pulled back in a sophisticated chignon that made her look like a completely different person. In her hands were divorce papers and a thick manila envelope containing every piece of evidence she'd gathered about his betrayal. Raymond sat up in bed, confused and still half asleep. "Hannah, what are you talking about? And why are you dressed like that? Did you get a job interview or something?" "I'm talking about your weekend trips to the beach house with Aria and River," Hannah said calmly, her voice steady and cold. "I'm talking about the baby she's carrying, your second child with her. I'm talking about the fact that our entire marriage has been a lie." The color drained from Raymond's face. "Hannah, I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything." Hannah opened the envelope and scattered photographs across the bed. Pictures of Raymond kissing Aria, playing with River, shopping for baby furniture, signing the lease on the beach house. "I know about the savings account you opened for your real family. I know about the jewelry you bought her while telling me we couldn't afford nice things. I know about your plans to divorce me after the baby is born to claim whatever inheritance you think I have." Raymond stared at the photos, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Hannah, please let me explain." "Explain what? That you never loved me? That our marriage was just a convenient arrangement while you figured out how to get back with your ex-wife? That my child and I were just obstacles to overcome?" Hannah's voice rose slightly, the only sign of the fury building inside her. "Don't worry, Raymond. I heard you explain everything perfectly clearly when you were on the phone with Aria 3 weeks ago." You were listening." Raymond's voice was barely a whisper. "I was coming home to tell you that our baby is a girl," Hannah said, her hand moving protectively to her belly. "Instead, I discovered that my husband has been living a double life since the day we got married." Raymond scrambled out of bed, reaching for her desperately. "Hannah, please, you have to understand. Aria and I have history, but that doesn't mean I don't care about you." "Don't." Hannah stepped back, her voice like ice. "Don't you dare lie to me anymore. I have recordings, Raymond, hours of conversations between you and Aria, where you laugh about how naive and pathetic I am, where you call me practice for being a real husband to her." Raymond's face crumpled. "Hannah, I was confused. I was scared. Having a child with you made me realize. It made you realize that you needed to secure whatever money you thought I had before you abandoned me," Hannah finished. "Well, congratulations, Raymond. You're about to find out exactly what I'm worth." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "James, it's time." Within minutes, there was a knock at the door. Hannah opened it to reveal James Whitmore, accompanied by two other lawyers and a security guard. Raymond stared in shock as this small army of legal professionals filed into his modest apartment. "Mr. Rico," James said formally, "you're being served with divorce papers. You have 30 days to respond, though I should warn you that we have substantial evidence of adultery and fraud." Who are you people?" Raymond stammered. "Hannah, how can you afford lawyers like this? What's going on?" Hannah turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd known her, Raymond saw her as she truly was, not a sweet, naive waitress, but a woman of immense power and strength. "My name is Hannah James," she said quietly. "My grandfather was Jonathan James, founder of James Industries. My father is Marcus James, current CEO. I am the sole heiress to a fortune worth $3.7 billion. The silence in the room was deafening. Raymond's knees actually buckled, and he had to grab the wall for support. That's impossible," he whispered. "You're a waitress. You live in this tiny apartment. You drive that old car." "Because I chose to," Hannah said simply. "I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I am, not what I have. I thought I'd found that with you. Instead, I found a man who married me, hoping to steal whatever small inheritance I might have, while planning to abandon me for his ex-wife." "Hannah, if I had known," Raymond started desperately. "If you had known, you would have been exactly the same man, just greedier." Hannah cut him off. "You would have lied to me about loving me. You would have cheated on me with Aria, and you would have planned to use me. The only difference is that you would have stolen billions instead of thousands." One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Rico, we need to discuss the terms of the divorce. Given the evidence of adultery and the prenuptial agreement—" "Prenuptial agreement?" Raymond looked confused. "We didn't sign a prenuptial agreement." Hannah smiled coldly. "Yes, we did. You signed it the same day you signed our marriage license. You were so excited about finally making it official that you didn't bother reading the papers James's assistant had you sign. That agreement states that in the event of divorce due to infidelity, you receive nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, nothing." "Hannah, please." Raymond fell to his knees, literally begging. "I'll leave Aria. I'll never see her again. I'll be the husband you deserve." "The husband I deserve would never have betrayed me in the first place," Hannah said, her voice final. "I'm done with you, Raymond, completely done. But the baby, my daughter, you can't keep me from my child. Until paternity is legally established, you have no rights to this child," James interrupted. "And given your pattern of deception and abandonment, any custody arrangement will be limited." Raymond looked around the room wildly, as if searching for some way to salvage the situation. "Hannah, I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Think about our daughter. She needs her father." "Our daughter needs a father who will love and protect her, not one who sees her as an inconvenience to be managed," Hannah said firmly. "You have Aria and River and your new baby on the way. Focus on being a father to them." "Aria doesn't know about the money," Raymond said desperately. "She thinks I'm leaving you because I realized I still loved her. If she finds out I threw away billions—" "That's not my problem," Hannah said simply. As if summoned by his words, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Aria herself, looking radiant and excited. "Ray, honey, I couldn't wait until tonight to—" She stopped short when she saw the crowd of people in the apartment, her eyes taking in the lawyers, the papers scattered everywhere, and Hannah's transformed appearance. "What's going on here?" Aria asked slowly. Hannah smiled at her, the first genuine smile she'd felt in weeks. "Hello, Aria. I'm Hannah James. I believe you know my husband, though not for much longer." "Hannah?" Aria looked confused. But Ray said you were just a waitress, that I was what? Hannah asked pleasantly. Naive? Pathetic? Easy to fool? Yes, he told me all about your conversations. Arya's face went pale as she realized the implications. You heard us. I heard everything. Your plans for your real family. Your excitement about Raymond finally leaving the fake mommy. Your shopping trips for baby furniture while I sat at home alone and pregnant. Hannah's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. I heard Raymond promise you a life of luxury, funded by whatever money he could steal from me after our divorce. Ray? Arya turned to Raymond, who was still kneeling on the floor, looking destroyed. What is she talking about? What money? Arya, Raymond said brokenly, Hannah isn't just a waitress. I'm worth $3.7 billion, Hannah finished helpfully. And your boyfriend just threw it all away for you. Arya stared at Hannah in shock, then at Raymond, then back at Hannah. Billion, as in billion with a B. That's right. Raymond could have been one of the wealthiest men in the country. Instead, he chose to betray the woman who could have given him everything for a woman who was impressed by beach house rentals and costume jewelry. Ray? Arya's voice was small now, uncertain. Is this true? Raymond couldn't even speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. So, when you were telling me that Hannah was just a phase, that you were only staying with her until you could figure out her finances. Arya's voice was getting stronger, angrier. You were actually married to a billionaire, and you threw that away. Arya, please, I love you. You love money, Arya exploded. You told me you were leaving her because you realized we were meant to be together, but really you were just trying to steal from her first. No, Arya, that's not... What about River? What about our new baby? How are we supposed to build a life together now? You promised us security, Raymond. You promised us a future. Hannah watched this confrontation with satisfaction. Everything was unraveling exactly as it should. I think, Hannah said quietly, you should all leave now. Raymond, you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Arya, you might want to reconsider your relationship with a man who would abandon his pregnant wife for an ex-wife, then abandon his pregnant ex-wife for money. As the lawyers packed up their papers and prepared to leave, Hannah felt a sense of profound relief. The woman who had been deceived and betrayed was gone. In her place stood Hannah James, wealthy, powerful, and ready to reclaim her real life. Hannah, Raymond said one last time, his voice broken. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Hannah looked at him for a long moment, this man who had wasted months of her life and broken her heart with his lies. No, Raymond, she said finally. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. And with that, Hannah James walked out of her old life forever. Chapter 4. New life, broken trust. Mommy, why does your belly have a princess in it but no daddy to protect her? 2-year-old Grace James asked this innocent question while playing with her toys in the sunroom of Hannah's family estate, her dark curls catching the afternoon light as she looked up at her mother with curious brown eyes. The question hit Hannah like a physical blow, even though she'd been expecting it eventually. Hannah set down her tea and knelt beside her daughter, marveling as she always did at Grace's intelligence and beauty. The little girl had inherited Hannah's warm brown skin and expressive eyes, but there was a sharpness to her gaze that reminded Hannah of her own business acumen. Even at 2, Grace was remarkably perceptive. Because, sweetheart, Hannah said carefully, some daddies aren't good enough to be part of our family. But we have Grandpa Marcus and Uncle James and all our family who love and protect us. It had been 2 years since Hannah had walked out of that apartment and back into her real life, and the transformation had been nothing short of remarkable. She now lived in the James family's primary estate, a sprawling mansion set on 50 acres of pristine land, complete with gardens, a private lake, and enough security to protect a small country. Grace had been born into luxury and love, surrounded by a family who cherished her completely. But Hannah herself had become someone entirely different from the trusting woman who had fallen for Raymond's lies. She was harder now, more calculating, slower to trust. The betrayal had left scars that even time and success couldn't fully heal. "Ms. James," her assistant Cameron knocked softly on the doorframe. "Your 1 o'clock appointment is here." Hannah glanced at her watch. She'd forgotten about the meeting with the contractors who were redesigning the estate's security system. Since Grace's birth, Hannah had become almost obsessively protective, installing state-of-the-art surveillance and hiring a full-time security team. She trusted no one completely, not even some of the staff who had worked for her family for years. "I'll be right there," Hannah said, kissing Grace's forehead. "Stay with Nanny Chen, baby girl." As Hannah walked toward her home office, she caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back was elegant, powerful, and intimidating. Her hair was styled in a perfect chignon, her clothing was designer perfection, and her expression was cool and controlled. She looked nothing like the warm, open woman who had once served coffee and dreamed of simple happiness. Sometimes Hannah missed that woman. But that woman had been naive enough to trust Raymond Rico, and Hannah would never make that mistake again. The security meeting lasted an hour, and Hannah found herself questioning every detail, every access point, every potential vulnerability. The contractors probably thought she was paranoid, but Hannah didn't care. She had learned the hard way that people weren't always who they seemed to be. After the meeting, Hannah returned to find Grace napping and a report from her private investigator on her desk. She'd kept tabs on Raymond since the divorce, partly for legal reasons and partly because she wanted to know if he posed any threat to her or Grace. The report made for fascinating reading. Raymond's life had imploded spectacularly after Hannah left him. Arya had broken up with him within a week of learning about Hannah's fortune. She'd been furious that Raymond had thrown away billions and left her relationship for a man who couldn't even provide basic security for her children. She'd moved to another state with River and her new baby, a daughter, and had completely cut off contact with Raymond. Raymond had tried desperately to reach Hannah in the months following their divorce, but Hannah's security team had intercepted every attempt. He'd sent letters, flowers, even shown up at her family's corporate offices, begging for a chance to explain. Each time, he'd been quietly and efficiently removed. His financial situation was dire. Without Hannah's hidden support, money she'd been secretly funneling into their joint accounts to maintain their modest lifestyle, Raymond had quickly discovered that his actual earning potential was minimal. He'd lost his apartment, his car, and most of his possessions. The last report showed him working at a series of minimum-wage jobs, moving from place to place, apparently unable to accept that his old life was gone forever. Hannah felt no sympathy for him. If anything, she felt a cold satisfaction that justice was being served. "Ms. James." Cameron appeared in the doorway again. "There's someone here to see you. A Mr. Lucas Morrison from Morrison Global Enterprises. He says it's about the Richardson Project." Hannah frowned. She wasn't familiar with Morrison Global, and she certainly wasn't working on anything called the Richardson Project. "Did he have an appointment?" "No, ma'am. But he insisted it was urgent, and when I mentioned his company name, security said he's legitimate. Apparently, Morrison Global is quite prominent in international development." Hannah's instincts immediately went on high alert. She trusted no one who showed up unannounced, especially men claiming urgent business. "Where is he now?" "In the main foyer with 2 security guards." "Good. Tell him I'll see him in the formal dining room in 10 minutes. Make sure security stays close." Hannah took those 10 minutes to research Morrison Global on her computer. What she found was impressive and concerning in equal measure. Lucas Morrison was apparently a billionaire in his own right, the CEO of a company that built resorts and developed luxury properties around the world. He was young, only 32, and according to the business magazines, brilliant and ruthless. He was also devastatingly handsome, which immediately made Hannah more suspicious. She'd learned not to trust attractive men who showed up unexpectedly. Hannah made her way to the dining room, her heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floors. She'd chosen this room deliberately. It was formal, intimidating, and designed to put visitors in their place. The long mahogany table, crystal chandeliers, and portraits of previous James family patriarchs created an atmosphere of old money and established power. Lucas Morrison was standing by the window when she entered, looking out at the gardens. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and Hannah had to admit that the photographs hadn't done him justice. He was tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair and striking blue eyes. His suit was expertly tailored, and he carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. "Ms. James," he said, extending his hand, "thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Hannah shook his hand briefly, noting that his grip was firm but not aggressive. "Mr. Morrison, I understand you wanted to discuss something called the Richardson Project, but I'm not familiar with any project by that name." Lucas smiled, and Hannah found herself annoyed by how charming it was. "I apologize for the deception, but I needed to get through your security. There is no Richardson Project. I'm here about something much more important." Hannah's expression turned glacial. "I don't appreciate being lied to, Mr. Morrison. I think this meeting is over." "Please," Lucas said quickly, "just give me 5 minutes. I'm here about Grace." Hannah went very still. "What about Grace?" "I was at Morrison Daycare yesterday. It's a premium childcare facility I own in the city. Grace was there with your nanny for a play date with one of the other children." Hannah's heart rate spiked. She knew about the playdate. Chen had asked permission to take Grace to meet another family who had a daughter Grace's age. Hannah had agreed only after having the family thoroughly investigated and the location secured. "Go on," Hannah said carefully. "There was an incident," Lucas continued. "A man showed up claiming to be Grace's father. He was demanding to see her, becoming increasingly agitated when the staff refused. Security had to remove him from the premises." Raymond. Hannah felt a cold fury building in her chest. What exactly did he do? He took photographs of Grace through the window before security stopped him. He was asking the other parents questions about her routine, what days she comes in, what time you usually pick her up. Lucas's expression was serious now. "Miss James, I don't know your situation, but this man seemed unstable, desperate. I thought you should know." Hannah sank into one of the dining room chairs, her mind racing. She'd been so careful, so thorough with her security measures. But Grace couldn't live in a fortress forever. She needed socialization, normal childhood experiences. Hannah had thought the daycare was safe. "Did he say anything else?" Hannah asked. "He kept talking about how you'd stolen his daughter from him, how you'd destroyed his life with lies. The staff said he seemed to know a lot about Grace's schedule and preferences, more than a stranger would know." "He's been watching her," Hannah said quietly, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "He's been watching my daughter." Lucas sat down across from her, his expression gentle but serious. "Miss James, I don't know what your history is with this man, but I have extensive experience with security issues. If you'd like, I could help you upgrade your protection protocols." Hannah looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Because Grace is a beautiful, innocent little girl who deserves to feel safe," Lucas said simply. "And because any man who would frighten a child to get revenge on her mother is the kind of person who needs to be stopped." For a moment, Hannah saw something in Lucas's eyes that she hadn't seen in a man's face since before Raymond. genuine concern with no ulterior motive. But she pushed that thought away immediately. She couldn't afford to trust her instincts about men anymore. "I appreciate the information, Mr. Morrison, but I have my own security team. We'll handle this." Lucas nodded and stood to leave. "Of course, but if you change your mind, here's my card. And Ms. James, you might want to consider varying Grace's routine for a while. Predictable patterns make it easier for someone to—" "To what?" Hannah's voice was sharp. "To get close to her when you're not around." The words hung in the air like a threat, and Hannah felt her carefully constructed sense of security crumbling. Raymond was escalating, becoming bolder. How long before he tried something more dangerous than taking photographs? "Mr. Morrison," Hannah said as he reached the door. "This man, did he say anything about me? About coming here?" Lucas turned back, his expression grave. "He said he knew where you lived now and that it was time for him to reclaim what was his." He paused. "Ms. James, I meant what I said about helping. I have resources that might be useful." After Lucas left, Hannah sat alone in the dining room for a long time, thinking. She'd built a new life, a safe life, a powerful life. But Raymond was still out there, still angry, still dangerous. And now he was threatening the most precious thing in her world. Hannah James had learned to protect herself from heartbreak. But protecting Grace, that would require a different kind of strength entirely. For the first time since leaving Raymond, Hannah realized she might not be able to do this alone. Chapter 5. Lucas's first attempt. "Grace, darling, would you like Mr. Lucas to be your new daddy?" The question came from Lucas Morrison as he knelt in the sand beside 2.5-year-old Grace, who was building an elaborate sandcastle on the private beach of his Malibu estate. Hannah felt her chest tighten as she watched her daughter's face light up with innocent joy, completely unaware that this moment was about to shatter the fragile trust Hannah had been building over the past 6 months. "Yes," Grace exclaimed, throwing her sandy arms around Lucas's neck. "Can he live with us in our big house? Can he read me stories and teach me to swim like he did today?" Hannah stood frozen 20 feet away, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of panic and betrayal. Lucas had orchestrated this entire day, the private beach, the romantic picnic, Grace's obvious adoration of him, all leading up to this moment where he would use her daughter to manipulate her into marriage. It was exactly what Raymond would have done. Lucas stood up, lifting Grace easily into his arms, and turned to face Hannah with a smile that she now saw as calculated and predatory. "Hannah, these past 6 months have been the most incredible of my life. Grace has become like a daughter to me, and you—" He set Grace down gently and pulled out a ring box. "You're the woman I want to spend the rest of my life protecting and loving." The ring was stunning, a flawless 3-carat diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the sunset light like fire. It probably cost more than most people made in a year. Hannah stared at it, her mind racing back through every moment of their relationship, looking for the lies she'd obviously missed. 6 months ago, Hannah had finally agreed to let Lucas help with her security concerns about Raymond. His team had been professional and effective, setting up better surveillance and protection protocols that had successfully kept Raymond away from Grace. But somewhere along the way, Hannah had made the fatal mistake of letting Lucas become part of their lives. He'd started small, bringing coffee when he came to check on security updates, staying to chat about Grace's latest adorable comments, offering to help with little things that Hannah's staff could have easily handled. Then came the invitations to dinner at his estate, always including Grace, always feeling natural and safe. Lucas had been patient, respectful, never pushing for more than Hannah was ready to give. He'd brought Grace thoughtful gifts, books, educational toys, art supplies that showed he'd been paying attention to her interests. He'd listened to Hannah's stories about building James Industries without trying to take over or offer unwanted advice. He'd seemed perfect. Too perfect. Hannah? Lucas was still kneeling, the ring box open between them, while Grace bounced excitedly beside him. Will you marry me? Hannah looked down at this man who had somehow infiltrated every aspect of her carefully guarded life. He'd been coming to family dinners for weeks now, charming her father and winning over her staff. Grace had started asking when Mr. Lucas was coming to visit, planning activities she wanted to show him, saving her best artwork to give him. And Hannah had let it happen because Lucas had made her feel something she thought was dead, the desire to trust someone again. No, Hannah said quietly. The word fell like a stone into the perfect scene Lucas had created. Grace's face fell in confusion, and Lucas looked as if he'd been physically struck. Hannah, I don't understand, Lucas said, slowly standing up. These past months, I thought we were building something real together. That's exactly the problem, Hannah said, her voice gaining strength. You thought. You assumed. You planned this entire day, used my daughter's feelings, manipulated the situation to put maximum pressure on me to say yes. That's not what I was doing. Isn't it? Hannah's voice was cold now, the same tone she used in business negotiations when someone tried to deceive her. The private beach, so I couldn't escape easily. The romantic setup, so I'd feel pressured to be grateful. Getting Grace excited about the idea so I'd look like the villain if I said no. Lucas's face paled. Hannah, you're misunderstanding my intentions. Am I? Because it looks to me like you've spent 6 months infiltrating my life, winning over my daughter, making yourself indispensable to our security and our routine, all building up to this moment where you'd put me in an impossible position. Mommy? Grace's small voice was confused and hurt. Don't you want Mr. Lucas to be part of our family? He loves us. Hannah knelt down and took Grace's hands, her heart breaking at the confusion in her daughter's eyes. Sweetheart, sometimes adults need more time to make big decisions. Mr. Lucas surprised Mommy today, and surprises can be scary even when they're meant to be nice. But I want him to stay, Grace said, tears starting to form. He makes you smile, Mommy. You don't smile very much anymore. The words hit Hannah like a physical blow. Out of the mouths of babes, Grace had seen something Hannah had been trying to hide even from herself. She had been happier these past months, more relaxed, more like the woman she used to be before Raymond destroyed her ability to trust. But that was exactly why this was so dangerous. Grace, why don't you go find some shells while Mommy and Mr. Lucas talk? Hannah suggested gently. Grace looked between them uncertainly, then ran off toward the water's edge where Lucas's security team was stationed to watch her. Hannah stood and faced Lucas, who was still holding the ring box like it might explode. Hannah, please let me explain, Lucas said desperately. I know this looks calculated, but I swear to you, that's not what this is. I've been planning this proposal for weeks because I wanted it to be perfect for you and Grace. I wanted to include her because she's part of you, part of what I'm asking to become part of my life. And that's exactly the problem, Hannah said. You included my daughter in a marriage proposal without asking me if I was ready for that step. You made assumptions about our relationship, about my feelings, about what I wanted. I thought you felt the same way I do, Lucas said quietly. The way you look at me sometimes, the way you've let me into your life. Hannah, I'm in love with you, completely, desperately in love with you. For a moment, Hannah wavered. The sincerity in his voice was compelling, and there was a part of her that desperately wanted to believe him. But that was the same part that had believed Raymond when he'd told her he loved her while planning to abandon her. Lucas, I can't, Hannah said finally. I'm not ready for this. I may never be ready for this. Because of him, Lucas said, and there was anger in his voice now. Because of whatever that bastard Raymond did to you. Yes, because of Raymond, Hannah snapped. Because I learned that men will say anything, do anything, become anything they think you want them to be in order to get what they want from you. I'm not Raymond, Lucas said firmly. How do I know that? Hannah's voice rose. How do I know you're not just a more sophisticated version of the same thing? You're richer, smoother, more patient, but maybe that just makes you more dangerous. Lucas stared at her for a long moment, the ring box still open in his hands. Because I've never lied to you. Because I've never asked you for anything except the chance to care for you and Grace. Because I'm willing to wait as long as it takes for you to trust me. But you're not willing to wait to propose, Hannah pointed out. You decided unilaterally that 6 months was enough, that I should be ready, that Grace should be involved in pressuring me to say yes. I wasn't trying to pressure you. Then why did you ask Grace first? Hannah demanded. Why did you make sure she was excited about the idea before you asked me? You put me in a position where saying no means disappointing my daughter. Lucas closed the ring box with a sharp snap. Because I love her too, he said quietly. Because she's part of you and I can't imagine a future with you that doesn't include her. Because I hoped, that you might want someone who would love both of you completely. Hannah felt tears threatening, which made her even angrier. She'd promised herself she would never again let a man make her cry. Grace, we're leaving, Hannah called out, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. But Mommy, we just got here, Grace protested, running back to them with a handful of shells. I know, sweetheart, but something came up at work that I need to handle, Hannah lied smoothly. Lucas stepped forward. Hannah, please don't leave like this. Let's talk about this rationally. There's nothing rational about this, Hannah said, picking up Grace despite her protests. You ambushed me, Lucas. You used my daughter to manipulate me into a situation I wasn't ready for. That's not love, that's strategy. Hannah, stay away from us, Hannah said firmly, walking toward the car Lucas's driver had brought them in. I'll arrange my own transportation home. Mommy, why are you angry at Mr. Lucas? Grace asked as Hannah strapped her into her car seat. He was just trying to be nice. Sometimes people do the wrong thing even when they're trying to be nice, Hannah explained, her heart aching at the disappointment in her daughter's voice. As their taxi pulled away from Lucas's estate, Hannah caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, standing alone on the beach with that ring box in his hand, watching them leave. For just a moment, Hannah wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Lucas had looked genuinely devastated, not angry or calculating like Raymond would have been. But that was exactly the kind of thinking that had gotten her into trouble before. Hannah James had learned the hard way that when it came to men and marriage, her first instinct should always be to protect herself and Grace, even if it meant walking away from something that might have been real. Mommy, Grace said softly as they drove through the hills toward home, will Mr. Lucas still come to dinner on Sundays? Hannah closed her eyes, already knowing that the hardest part of protecting Grace would be explaining why their safe, happy routine was about to change again. No, sweetheart, Hannah said quietly. I don't think he will. Chapter 6. The Second Rejection. Every night, Grace cries herself to sleep, asking when Lucas is coming back, but you're too proud to admit you made a mistake. Hannah's father, Marcus James, delivered this brutal assessment as he stood in her home office, watching his daughter pretend to focus on quarterly reports, while her world fell apart around her. It had been 6 months since the beach proposal disaster, and everyone, including Grace, was suffering from Hannah's decision to cut Lucas completely out of their lives. I didn't make a mistake, Hannah said without looking up from her papers, though the words felt hollow even to her. I protected my daughter from a man who was trying to manipulate her to get to me. Did you? Marcus challenged. Because from where I stand, you destroyed the happiness of a child who had finally found a father figure she could trust. Hannah's pen snapped in her grip. Grace's heartbreak over Lucas's sudden disappearance had been devastating to watch. For weeks, the 3-year-old had asked daily when Mr. Lucas was coming to visit, when they were going back to his beach house, why he didn't come to Sunday dinners anymore. Eventually, Grace had stopped asking, but she'd also stopped being the bright, cheerful child she'd been during those months when Lucas was part of their lives. Grace will get over it, Hannah said, though she didn't believe it herself. Will she? Because it's been 6 months, Hannah, and she hasn't. She's withdrawn. She barely plays with her toys anymore. And yesterday I found her crying in the garden asking if she did something wrong to make Mr. Lucas leave. That hit Hannah like a physical blow. She'd been so focused on protecting Grace from potential heartbreak that she'd caused the very pain she'd been trying to prevent. Dad, I can't... Can't what? Can't trust your own judgment. Can't believe that maybe, just maybe, you found a good man who genuinely loves you and Grace? Marcus sat down across from his daughter, his voice gentle but firm. Hannah, I know Raymond hurt you badly, but you can't let that man destroy your ability to recognize love when it's standing right in front of you. How do I know Lucas is different? Hannah asked, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. How do I know he's not just better at hiding his true motives? Because I've had him investigated, Marcus said simply. Hannah stared at her father in shock. You what? The moment he first showed up here claiming to be concerned about Grace's safety, I had our best people look into Lucas Morrison. Background checks, financial records, business practices, personal relationships, everything. Marcus pulled out a thick folder and set it on Hannah's desk. Do you want to know what they found? Dad, they found a man who built his company from nothing through hard work and ethical business practices. A man who donates millions to children's charities every year and doesn't publicize it. A man who has never been married but who has maintained long-term friendships with every woman he's ever dated, including the ones who ended the relationships. Hannah stared at the folder but didn't touch it. They also found, Marcus continued, that Lucas Morrison has turned down 3 major business deals in the past 6 months because they would have required him to relocate or travel extensively. When asked why, he told his board that he had personal commitments keeping him in the area. That doesn't mean... Hannah, the man reorganized his entire life around the possibility of being near you and Grace. He's never done that for anyone else, according to the women we interviewed. Hannah felt something crack inside her chest. You interviewed his ex-girlfriends. 2 of them. Both spoke very highly of him. One said she broke up with him because he was too good, too honest, too giving, too willing to put her needs before his own business interests. She said she couldn't handle being with someone who made her want to be a better person. For 6 months, Hannah had been telling herself that her instincts about Lucas were wrong, that she'd been smart to protect herself and Grace. But what if her instincts had been right the first time? What if Lucas really was different? There's more, Marcus said gently. Lucas Morrison has been quietly providing security for Grace even after you banned him from your lives. What? Hannah's voice was sharp. He never canceled the protection protocols he set up. His team has been monitoring the perimeter of the estate, following Grace's car when Chen takes her to activities, maintaining surveillance on Raymond Rico. He's been protecting your daughter for 6 months without ever asking for credit or contact. Hannah felt the room spinning around her. That's stalking. Is it? Or is it a man who loves a little girl continuing to protect her, even when her mother has told him to stay away? Marcus leaned forward. Hannah, 3 weeks ago, Raymond tried to approach Grace at her ballet class. Lucas's security team intercepted him before he could get within 50 feet of the building. Did you know about that incident? Hannah's blood went cold. Number Chen never mentioned, because Lucas's people handled it so discreetly that Chen never knew there was a threat. Raymond was quietly detained, questioned, and warned that his next attempt would result in arrest. Then he was escorted out of the city with the understanding that if he came back, Lucas's legal team would press charges for stalking and harassment. Lucas did that. Lucas has been protecting Grace every day for 6 months, Hannah. Not because he wants something from you, but because he can't bear the thought of that little girl being hurt by the same man who destroyed her mother's ability to trust. Hannah stared at her father, her mind reeling. Everything she'd believed about Lucas's motives was crumbling, and in its place was a picture of a man who had loved them both enough to keep protecting them, even when he'd been pushed away. "There's a reason I'm telling you this today," Marcus continued. "Lucas Morrison requested a meeting with me this morning." "A meeting about what?" "About asking for my permission to propose to you again." Hannah's heart stopped. He wants to propose again? He wants to do it right this time. He came to me, not to Grace, not with some elaborate plan or public pressure, but to me as your father, to ask for my blessing before he approaches you. What did you tell him? I told him that if he could convince you to trust him, he had my full support. And then I told him about Grace's birthday party next week. Hannah's mind raced. Grace's 4th birthday party was going to be a small affair at the estate, just family and a few children from her preschool class. Hannah had been dreading it because she knew Grace would spend the whole day hoping Lucas would show up. "Dad, you didn't—" "I invited him," Marcus said firmly. "Not as your potential fiancé, but as a family friend who cares about Grace. You can't keep punishing that child for your fear, Hannah. She deserves to have the people who love her at her birthday party." "I can't see him," Hannah said desperately. "I can't handle. I don't know what I'll do if he proposes again." "Then tell him that. Be honest with him about your fears instead of running away from them." Marcus stood up, his expression gentle but determined. "Hannah, you've spent 4 years building walls to protect yourself from being hurt again, but those same walls are keeping out the very happiness you deserve." That afternoon, Hannah sat in Grace's room, watching her daughter play quietly with her dolls. Grace had always been an imaginative child, but lately her games had taken on a melancholy tone. Today she was playing family, and Hannah noticed that Grace kept setting up 3 places at the tiny tea table, then sadly removing one of them. "Who are you playing with, sweetheart?" Hannah asked gently. "Just my dolls," Grace said without looking up. "I was pretending Mr. Lucas was here for tea, but then I remembered he doesn't come anymore." "Grace, do you miss Lucas?" Grace's face lit up for the first time in months. "So much, Mommy." He made the best funny voices when he read stories, and he taught me how to make sandcastles that don't fall down, and he always remembered what my favorite color was. "What else do you remember about Lucas?" "He made you laugh," Grace said simply, "and he always asked me questions about my day like he really wanted to know. And he never got mad when I spilled things or forgot to use my napkin." Hannah felt tears building behind her eyes. This was the man she'd convinced herself was manipulative and dangerous, a man who had made her laugh again, who had treated her daughter like she was precious, who had never shown anything but patience and kindness. "Mommy," Grace looked up at her with hope in her eyes, "is Mr. Lucas coming to my birthday party?" Hannah looked at her daughter's face, seeing the desperate hope there, and made a decision that terrified her. "Would you like him to come?" "Yes." Grace threw her arms around Hannah's neck. "More than anything, can you call him? Can you tell him I miss him?" That evening, Hannah stood on her balcony with her phone in her hand, Lucas's number on the screen. She'd been standing there for 20 minutes, trying to find the courage to make the call. Finally, she pressed the button. "Hannah?" Lucas's voice was surprised but warm. "Is everything okay? Is Grace—" "Grace is fine," Hannah said quickly. I'm calling because it's her birthday next week, and she wants you to come to her party." There was a long pause. "And what do you want, Hannah?" It was such a simple question, but it cut straight to the heart of everything Hannah had been avoiding for 6 months. "I want to stop being afraid," Hannah said quietly. "I want to stop punishing Grace for my inability to trust. And I want to see you again." "Hannah." "But I need you to understand something," Hannah continued, her voice stronger now. "I'm not ready for marriage proposals or grand romantic gestures. I need time. I need to learn to trust you slowly, carefully. Can you accept that?" "I can accept whatever you need me to accept," Lucas said softly. "I've missed you both so much, Hannah. I've missed your laugh and Grace's stories and the way you both make everything in the world seem brighter." "Then come to her party," Hannah said. "Come as Grace's friend. We'll figure out the rest as we go." After she hung up, Hannah realized she was crying, not from sadness this time, but from relief. For the first time in 6 months, she was allowing herself to hope. But deep down, she knew that when Lucas came to Grace's party, he'd probably try to propose again. And this time, Hannah wasn't sure she'd have the strength to say no, which terrified her more than anything else in the world. Chapter 7. Trust Building and Third Proposal. "Hannah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Grace is missing." Lucas's voice on the phone was deadly calm, but Hannah could hear the controlled panic underneath as she sat in her office reviewing quarterly reports. It was Tuesday afternoon, 2 years after Grace's third birthday party had brought Lucas back into their lives, and Hannah had been enjoying the peaceful routine of a normal day. That peace shattered instantly. "What do you mean missing?" Hannah's voice was sharp as ice as she grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Chen took her to the park for their usual Tuesday playdate. 15 minutes ago, Chen called in a panic, saying Grace vanished from the playground. She was on the swings. Chen turned to talk to another nanny for literally 30 seconds. And when she looked back, Grace was gone. Hannah was already running toward her car, her heart pounding so hard she could barely think. "Where are you?" "Already at the park with my security team." "Hannah, there's something else. We found evidence that Raymond has been in the area. Surveillance cameras caught him watching the park from across the street yesterday." The world tilted around Hannah. Raymond had been quiet for 2 years, and she'd foolishly allowed herself to believe he'd given up. "How long has Grace been missing?" 22 minutes. I've already called the police, but I wanted you to know before they contacted you. I'm coordinating search teams in all directions from the park." Hannah screeched into the park's parking lot 12 minutes later to find controlled chaos. Police cars, Lucas's black SUVs, and what appeared to be a small army of security personnel were systematically searching every inch of the area. Lucas was in the center of it all, directing the search with military precision, while Chen sat sobbing on a bench with a female police officer. "Hannah." Lucas spotted her and immediately came over, his face grim but his voice steady. "We've expanded the search radius, and I have teams checking every building, every car, every possible hiding place within a 2-mile radius." "This is my fault," Hannah said, her voice breaking. "I let my guard down. I thought we were safe." "This is not your fault," Lucas said firmly, taking her hands. "This is Raymond's fault, and we're going to find her. I promise you, Hannah, we will bring Grace home safely." What if he's taken her out of the state? What if— "Look at me," Lucas commanded, his hands moving to frame her face. "Grace is smart, she's brave, and she knows how to stay safe because you taught her well. And I'm not going to stop looking until we find her." Detective Morrison, no relation to Lucas, as he'd quickly clarified, approached them with a grave expression. "Mrs. James, we need to discuss the possibility that this is a custodial interference case. Can you tell me about your relationship with the child's father?" For the next 10 minutes, Hannah found herself explaining the entire situation with Raymond, Their marriage, his betrayal, the divorce, his escalating attempts to contact Grace. Lucas stayed beside her throughout, his hand on her back, occasionally filling in details about the security measures they'd put in place. So this Raymond Rico has never had legal custody or visitation rights? Detective Morrison asked. None, Hannah confirmed. The divorce decree specifically stated no contact until paternity was established, which he never pursued. But he's the biological father. Yes, Hannah said, the word feeling like poison in her mouth. Mrs. James, the detective said gently, I need you to prepare for the possibility that if Mr. Rico has taken Grace, he may argue that he's simply exercising his parental rights. That could complicate the legal aspects of recovery. He has no rights, Hannah exploded. He abandoned us before she was even born. Ma'am, I understand, but the law... The law, Lucas interrupted coldly, can be changed after we find Grace. Right now, our only priority is getting her back safely. An hour later, they had their breakthrough. One of Lucas's security teams found a witness, an elderly man who had been walking his dog near the park's back entrance. He'd seen a man matching Raymond's description talking to a young girl who fit Grace's description by a blue sedan. She didn't seem scared, the man reported. The man was kneeling down, talking to her real gentle-like. She walked to the car with him on her own. Hannah felt sick. Raymond had somehow convinced Grace to go with him willingly, which meant Grace might not even realize she was in danger. Did you see which direction they went? Lucas asked. North on Maple Street, toward the highway. Lucas was already on his phone with his security team, coordinating roadblocks and highway monitoring. Hannah watched him work, marveling even in her panic at how efficiently he'd taken charge of the situation. Hannah, Detective Morrison approached again. We've issued an Amber Alert. Grace's photo and description are going out statewide. We'll also need you to come to the station to provide any additional information about Raymond, where he might take her, what his motivations might be. I'll drive her, Lucas said immediately. Actually, Mr. Morrison, I need to speak with Mrs. James privately. This is a family matter. Lucas is family, Hannah said firmly, surprising herself. He stays with me. At the police station, Hannah found herself answering endless questions about Raymond's psychological state, his possible hideouts, his relationship with Grace. Through it all, Lucas sat beside her, occasionally squeezing her hand when the questions became too difficult. Mrs. James, Detective Morrison said after 2 hours of questioning, I need to ask you about something. Our investigation shows that Mr. Morrison here has been providing security for you and Grace for several years. Can you tell me about that arrangement? Hannah glanced at Lucas, suddenly realizing how their relationship might look to outsiders. Lucas he's been helping us stay safe. Are you in a romantic relationship with Mr. Morrison? Hannah hesitated, not sure how to define what they'd become over the past 2 years. We're together, Lucas said simply. I love Hannah and Grace, and I've been doing everything in my power to protect them both. I see. And have you ever met Raymond Rico? No, but I've been tracking his movements and activities to ensure he stayed away from Hannah and Grace. Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you to step outside while I finish speaking with Mrs. James. After Lucas left, Detective Morrison's tone became more serious. Mrs. James, I need you to understand that this situation is more complicated than a simple kidnapping. If Raymond Rico is Grace's biological father, and if he can argue that he was denied access to his child unfairly, this becomes a custody dispute rather than a criminal matter. What are you saying? I'm saying that unless we can prove Raymond intended to permanently deprive you of Grace, or unless we can prove he's endangering her welfare, we may not be able to charge him with kidnapping. Hannah felt the world crashing down around her. So he can just take my daughter and there's nothing you can do? We can and will recover Grace, the detective assured her. But the charges Raymond faces afterward may depend on his motivations and actions. When Lucas was allowed back in, he took one look at Hannah's face and immediately pulled her into his arms. What did he say? Hannah explained the detective's concerns about custody versus kidnapping and watched Lucas's expression grow thunderous. "That's not going to happen," Lucas said quietly. "Raymond Rico is never getting custody of Grace." "Lucas, if the law says, the law can be influenced by facts," Lucas said, "and I've been gathering facts about Raymond for 2 years." Before Hannah could ask what he meant, Lucas's phone rang. "Morrison," he answered sharply. Then his entire posture changed. "You found them." "Where?" Hannah's heart stopped as Lucas listened to the caller. "Understood. We're on our way." "They found Grace," Lucas said, pulling Hannah toward the door. "She's safe. Raymond had her at a motel about 40 miles north. Local police are taking him into custody now." The drive to the motel was the longest 40 minutes of Hannah's life. When they finally arrived, Hannah saw Grace sitting in a police car, looking small and confused but unharmed. The moment Grace saw Hannah, she burst into tears and ran into her mother's arms. "Mommy, I was so scared. The man said he was my daddy, but he wasn't nice like Mr. Lucas." Hannah held her daughter tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her solid warmth, reassuring herself that Grace was really safe. "What did he do, sweetheart?" Hannah asked gently. "He said he was going to take me to meet my grandparents, but when I asked to call you, he said I couldn't, and he kept crying and saying confusing things about you. I told him Mr. Lucas would come find me, and he got really upset." Hannah looked over Grace's head at Lucas, who was speaking with the police officers. His expression was grim as he listened to whatever they were telling him. "Mrs. James?" Detective Morrison approached. "We need Grace to answer a few questions, but she's been through enough for today. Can you bring her to the station tomorrow morning?" "Of course." "And Mrs. James, Raymond Rico has been arrested, but he's already called a lawyer. This isn't over." That night, after Grace had finally fallen asleep in Hannah's bed, she'd refused to sleep alone. Hannah found Lucas on the balcony outside her bedroom, staring out at the estate's grounds. "You saved her," Hannah said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "My security team saved her. I just coordinated the search. Lucas, look at me." When he turned, Hannah saw exhaustion and something else in his eyes, a deep, abiding love that she'd been too scared to acknowledge. "You saved my daughter. You saved me. Today, when I thought I might lose Grace forever, you were the person I trusted to find her." "Hannah, I need to tell you something," Hannah interrupted. "These past 2 years, watching you with Grace, seeing how you've protected us, how you've been patient with my fears, I've fallen in love with you." Lucas's expression transformed, hope lighting his features. "But I'm still scared," Hannah continued. "I'm scared of trusting completely, scared of marriage, scared of giving someone else the power to destroy me." Lucas stepped closer, his hands gentle on her face. "What if I told you that you already have the power to destroy me, that you've had it since the day I met you?" "Lucas, Hannah James, I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I love your strength, your intelligence, your fierce protection of Grace. I love the way you make me want to be better, stronger, more worthy of you." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box, a different one than he'd used before. "I'm not asking you to stop being scared. I'm asking you to be scared with me, to build something together despite the fear." This time the ring was simpler, still beautiful, but elegant rather than flashy, personal rather than impressive. "Will you marry me, Hannah? Will you let me be Grace's father officially, legally, forever?" Hannah looked down at this man who had spent years proving his love through actions rather than words, who had moved heaven and earth to bring her daughter home safely, who had earned the right to ask this question. I want to say yes, Hannah whispered, but what if I'm not ready? What if I need more time? Then we'll wait, Lucas said simply. I'll ask you again next year and the year after that, and the year after that, until you're ready to say yes. Hannah stared at him, this patient, loving man who was willing to wait indefinitely for her to heal. Ask me again in a year, she said softly, when I've had time to be sure, to work through my fear, to become the woman you deserve. Lucas smiled, kissing her hand before standing up. I'll be here, Hannah. However long it takes, I'll be here. As they stood together on the balcony, holding each other while Grace slept safely in the room behind them, Hannah allowed herself to believe that maybe, someday, she would be brave enough to say yes. But not yet. Not until she was sure she could trust her heart completely. Lucas deserved nothing less than everything, and Hannah was determined to make sure she could give it to him. Chapter 8. The fourth proposal. Mommy, are you going to make Mr. Lucas sad again by saying no when he asks you to marry him tonight? 6-year-old Grace asked this devastating question while Hannah was trying to zip up her daughter's flower girl dress for her cousin's wedding. It was exactly 1 year since Lucas's third proposal, exactly 1 year since he'd promised to wait as long as it took, and exactly 1 year since Hannah had asked for more time to heal. The problem was, Hannah had healed. Somewhere between Raymond's trial, where he'd been convicted of kidnapping and given 5 years in prison, Grace starting kindergarten, and the quiet, steady rhythm of life with Lucas, Hannah had realized that her fear had transformed into something else entirely: anticipation. What makes you think Mr. Lucas is going to propose tonight, sweetheart? Hannah asked, though her heart was already racing. Lucas had been acting differently all week, more nervous, more secretive, asking strange questions about her schedule and preferences. Because Grandpa Marcus told Grandma Ruth that Lucas asked for his blessing again, Grace said matter-of-factly while examining herself in the mirror. And because Lucas bought a new ring box and hid it in his jacket pocket when he thought I wasn't looking. Hannah's hands stilled on the zipper. Grace, you shouldn't eavesdrop on adult conversations. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was sitting right there playing with my blocks when they were talking. Grace turned around, her expression serious beyond her years. Mommy, do you love Mr. Lucas? Yes, sweetheart, I do. And does he love us? Very much. Then why won't you marry him? All my friends at school think it's weird that my daddy lives in a different house. Hannah's heart clenched. Over the past year, Grace had started calling Lucas Daddy more and more frequently, and Lucas had never corrected her. In fact, he'd started introducing himself as Grace's father to teachers, doctors, and other parents. For all practical purposes, Lucas Morrison had been Grace's father since she was 3 years old. It's complicated, Grace. No, it's not, Grace said with the brutal honesty of a 5-year-old. You're scared because my first daddy was mean to you. But Lucas isn't mean. Lucas loves us and takes care of us and makes you smile. That's what daddies are supposed to do. Hannah stared at her daughter, wondering when Grace had become so wise. You're right, sweetheart. It really isn't that complicated. So when he asks you tonight, you'll say yes. Hannah looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. The woman staring back was no longer the broken, fearful person who had divorced Raymond 6 years ago. This woman was strong, confident, surrounded by people who loved her. This woman had built an empire, raised an incredible daughter, and found a man who had proven his devotion through years of patient, consistent love. This woman was ready to say yes. Yes, Hannah said quietly. I think I will. Grace threw her arms around Hannah's waist. Finally! I was getting tired of waiting for you to stop being silly. 2 hours later, Hannah stood in the garden of her cousin's estate, watching Lucas dance with Grace while the wedding reception continued around them. He was teaching her to waltz, lifting her up so she could reach his shoulders, spinning her around until she giggled with delight. Other guests had stopped their own conversations to watch the sweet scene, and Hannah heard more than one person comment on what a wonderful father Lucas was. "You know he's going to propose tonight," Marcus said, appearing beside Hannah with 2 glasses of champagne. "So I've been told," Hannah replied, accepting the glass. "Apparently it's common knowledge. Are you ready this time?" Hannah watched Lucas dip Grace dramatically, making her squeal with laughter. "Dad, can I ask you something? When you were investigating Lucas 3 years ago, what convinced you that he was genuine?" Marcus followed her gaze to Lucas and Grace. It wasn't anything in his background check, though that was all exemplary. It was something much simpler. "What?" "I watched him with Grace during that first birthday party after you'd reconciled. There was a moment when Grace spilled grape juice all over his white shirt. You remember that expensive silk one. Any other man would have been annoyed, would have made some comment about being more careful." Hannah remembered. She'd been mortified, rushing to clean up the mess and apologize. "Lucas didn't even acknowledge the stain," Marcus continued. "He just kept playing with Grace like nothing had happened. Later, when you were busy with other guests, I saw him take off the shirt and throw it away rather than ask your staff to try to clean it. He didn't want to create extra work for anyone or draw attention to Grace's accident. That's when you knew. That's when I knew he loved her for herself, not as a way to get to you. Any man can pretend to care about a woman's child for a few months. But Lucas has been putting Grace's emotional well-being before his own comfort for 3 years now." As if summoned by their conversation, Lucas approached with Grace in his arms, both of them slightly breathless from dancing. "Mommy, did you see how high Daddy spun me?" Grace asked excitedly. "I saw, sweetheart. You looked like you were flying." "Hannah," Lucas said, his voice slightly nervous, "would you like to take a walk? The gardens here are beautiful in the moonlight." Grace giggled and whispered loudly, "This is when he's going to ask you, Mommy." "Grace," Lucas said with mock seriousness, "you're supposed to keep secrets secret." "Sorry, Daddy, but I'm really excited." Lucas set Grace down and she scampered off to find her grandfather, leaving Hannah and Lucas alone for the first time all evening. "She called you Daddy again," Hannah observed as they walked toward the rose garden. "She's been doing that more often lately. I hope that's okay." "It's more than okay. Lucas, you've been her father in every way that matters since she was 3 years old." They reached a secluded part of the garden, lit by strings of fairy lights and fragrant with blooming roses. Lucas stopped walking and turned to face Hannah, his expression serious but hopeful. "Hannah, do you remember what you said to me a year ago? You asked me to wait until you were sure, until you could trust your heart completely." "I remember." "Have you learned to trust your heart?" Hannah looked at this man who had proven himself over and over again for 3 years, who had never once lost patience with her fears, never pressured her to move faster than she was comfortable with, never made her feel broken or damaged for needing time to heal. "My heart has been trying to tell me something for months now," Hannah said softly, "but I've been too stubborn to listen." "What has it been trying to tell you?" "That I've been ready to marry you for almost a year, that I've been looking for excuses to wait because being scared felt safer than being vulnerable, that I've been punishing both of us for Raymond's sins." Lucas stepped closer, his hands gentle on her face. "And what is your heart telling you now?" "That I love you completely, that I trust you with everything I have, that I want to spend the rest of my life building something beautiful with you and Grace." "Hannah." "That I'm ready to say yes," Hannah finished, tears starting to fall. "I'm ready to be your wife, ready to make you Grace's legal father, ready to stop being afraid of happiness." Lucas stared at her for a moment, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Then he dropped to one knee, pulling out that ring box Grace had spotted earlier. "Hannah James," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I have loved you for 4 years. I have waited for you, hoped for you, dreamed of this moment for so long that I'm almost afraid it's not real." "It's real," Hannah whispered. "Will you marry me? Will you let me love you and Grace for the rest of my life? Will you trust me with your heart, your future, your happiness?" Hannah looked down at this incredible man who had proven his love through years of patience and devotion, who had earned the right to ask this question through consistent, unwavering commitment. "Yes," she said, the word coming out as a sob. "Yes, Lucas, I'll marry you." The ring slipped onto her finger perfectly, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds that caught the fairy lights like stars. It was beautiful, unique, completely perfect for her. "Hannah Morrison," Lucas said, standing up and kissing her deeply. "I love the sound of that. Daddy, Mommy, did she say yes?" They broke apart to find Grace running toward them, followed by what appeared to be half the wedding reception. Apparently their private moment had been witnessed by most of the guests. "She said yes," Lucas called out, sweeping Grace up in his arms while keeping his other arm around Hannah. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and suddenly Hannah was surrounded by family and friends, offering congratulations and admiring her ring. But through it all, she was aware only of Lucas's arm around her waist and Grace's delighted laughter. "When can we have the wedding?" Grace asked as the excitement died down. "Can I pick my dress? Can I be the flower girl again?" "You can be whatever you want to be, princess," Lucas said, kissing the top of her head. "It's going to be your family's wedding, too." Later that night, after Grace had fallen asleep between them on the couch while they planned their future, Hannah realized that this was what happiness felt like. Not the desperate, uncertain emotion she'd mistaken for love with Raymond, but this steady, peaceful certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "Lucas," she said softly, not wanting to wake Grace. Thank you for waiting for me." "Thank you for being worth waiting for," he replied, kissing her temple. "Thank you for letting me love you both." As Hannah drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the two people she loved most in the world, she realized that sometimes the best things in life were worth waiting for, and sometimes, if you were very lucky, they waited for you too. Chapter 9. The Wedding and Raymond's Desperation. "Please, Hannah, don't do this to me. I'm begging you to remember who we used to be before you destroy my last chance at happiness." Raymond Rico's desperate plea echoed across the manicured grounds of the James estate as he stood in handcuffs between two security guards, having somehow managed to escape from prison transport just hours before Hannah's wedding to Lucas. His prison uniform was dirty and torn, his face gaunt from 3 years behind bars, and his eyes held the wild desperation of a man who had finally lost everything. Hannah stood 50 feet away in her wedding dress, a stunning creation of ivory silk and French lace that made her look like a queen, flanked by Lucas in his black tuxedo and Grace in her flower girl dress. The wedding guests, including some of the most powerful people in the country, watched in stunned silence as this dramatic confrontation unfolded. "Who we used to be." Hannah's voice was ice cold as she stepped forward, Lucas immediately moving to stay beside her. "You mean when you were lying to me every day of our marriage? When you were planning to abandon me and our unborn child for your ex-wife? When you were stealing from me while pretending to love me?" "I made mistakes," Raymond shouted, struggling against the guards holding him. "But I've paid for them. 3 years in prison, Hannah. 3 years of thinking about what I lost, what I threw away." "What you threw away," Hannah repeated, her voice deadly quiet, "was the chance to know an incredible little girl who calls another man daddy because you were too selfish and stupid to appreciate what you had." Raymond's gaze fell on Grace, who was pressed close to Lucas's side, looking scared but protected. "Grace," he said, his voice breaking, "Sweetheart, I'm your real daddy. I know you don't remember me, but I love you. I've always loved you." "No," Grace said firmly, her small voice carrying clearly across the lawn. Lucas is my daddy. He reads me stories and helps with my homework and makes Mommy laugh. You're just the man who made Mommy cry." The words hit Raymond like physical blows. "Hannah, please, you've poisoned her against me. I've never spoken about you to Grace except to answer her direct questions," Hannah said firmly. "Everything she knows about you, she learned from your own actions." Detective Morrison approached the group, having arrived with the escaped prisoner alert. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, addressing Hannah by her married name. The ceremony had been completed just before Raymond's dramatic arrival. "We have the situation under control. Rico was captured about a mile from here. Apparently, he overpowered a guard during a routine medical transport." "How did he know about the wedding?" Lucas asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Prison communications are monitored, but not perfectly," the detective admitted. "We believe he may have seen coverage in the newspaper's society section." Hannah realized with a chill that her wedding had been featured prominently in the press. Photos of her dress, shopping with Grace, interviews about the James family fortune, speculation about Lucas's business empire. Raymond would have seen it all and realized that Hannah was not only moving on completely, but marrying a man who could give her everything Raymond never could. "Hannah," Raymond tried again, his voice desperate now. "I know I hurt you, but we have a child together. We have history. You can't just erase that and pretend this man is Grace's father." "He is Grace's father," Hannah said simply. "In every way that matters. He's the one who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up all night when she had the flu, who helped her learn to read. Where were you for any of that, Raymond?" "I was in prison because of you," Raymond exploded. "You had me arrested for trying to see my own daughter. You kidnapped a 5-year-old child." Lucas stepped forward, his voice controlled but lethal. "You terrified her, traumatized her, and then tried to use her as a weapon against her mother. That's not love. That's selfishness. And who are you?" Raymond turned his fury on Lucas. "Some rich boy who thinks he can buy a family. You don't know Hannah like I do. You don't know that she's not who she pretends to be." "I know exactly who Hannah is," Lucas said calmly. "She's the strongest woman I've ever met. She's a brilliant businesswoman, a devoted mother, and the love of my life. She's also someone who deserves better than a man who would abandon her while she was pregnant and then spend years terrorizing her." "You think you're so perfect?" Raymond snarled. "What happens when you get tired of playing house? What happens when you want your freedom back?" "That will never happen," Lucas said with absolute certainty. "Because unlike you, I know the difference between a convenience and a gift. Hannah and Grace aren't obligations I have to endure. They're the best things that ever happened to me." "Grace is my daughter," Raymond shouted, making one last desperate lunge toward the little girl before the guards restrained him completely. Grace didn't cower or cry. Instead, she stepped forward and looked at Raymond with the fearless confidence of a child who had never doubted she was loved and protected. "My last name will be Morrison soon," she said clearly. "Lucas is going to adopt me, and we're a real family. You can't have me because I don't want you. You're scary, and you make people sad." The simple honesty of Grace's words seemed to break something inside Raymond. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time since he'd appeared, he looked truly defeated. "I've lost everything," he whispered, staring at Hannah. "My family, my life, my daughter. You were supposed to be mine, Hannah. We were supposed to build a life together." "We tried to build a life together," Hannah said, her voice gentler now but still firm. "And you chose to tear it down with lies and betrayal. That wasn't my choice, Raymond. That was yours. I would have loved you if I'd known," Raymond said desperately. "If I'd known about the money, about who you really were." "That's exactly the problem," Hannah interrupted. "You would have loved my money, not me. Lucas fell in love with Hannah the waitress before he ever knew about James Industries. He loved me when I was broken and scared and didn't trust anyone. He loved Grace when she was just a little girl who needed a father, not an heiress he could use for connections. Mrs. Morrison, Detective Morrison said gently, we need to transport Rico back to custody. He'll face additional charges for the escape and for violating the restraining order. How much time will he get? Lucas asked. Given his record and the violence of the escape, probably another 5 to 7 years, the detective replied. Raymond stared at Hannah one last time. I hope you'll be happy, he said, and for the first time in 6 years, he sounded like he might actually mean it. I hope he gives you everything I was too stupid to appreciate. He already has, Hannah said quietly. As the police led Raymond away, the wedding guests slowly began to resume their celebration. The incident had been dramatic but brief, and most people seemed eager to return to the festivities. Are you okay? Lucas asked Hannah quietly, his arm around her waist. I'm perfect, Hannah said, and realized she meant it completely. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Mommy, Grace tugged on Hannah's dress, is the scary man going to come back? No, sweetheart, Hannah knelt down to Grace's level. He's going away for a very long time, and he won't be able to bother us anymore. Good, Grace said firmly, because this is our happy day, and he was trying to make it sad. You're absolutely right, Lucas said, picking Grace up and spinning her around. This is our happy day, and nothing is going to change that. As the afternoon turned to evening, Hannah found herself surrounded by love and joy. Grace charmed all the guests with her dancing and her speeches about her new daddy. Lucas was the perfect husband, and Hannah felt a peace she'd never experienced before. During their first dance, Lucas pulled Hannah close and whispered in her ear, Do you regret waiting so long to say yes? No, Hannah said honestly. I needed those years to heal, to learn to trust you completely. And you needed them to prove that your love was real. We're both better people now than we were 4 years ago. And Grace? Hannah looked over at their daughter, who was dancing with her grandfather Marcus, while wearing Lucas's suit jacket like a cape. Grace has never known anything but love and security, Hannah said. Even when I was scared and broken, she was surrounded by people who adored her. Raymond was never her father. He was just the man who helped create her. And now she has a real father, one who chose her, fought for her, and loves her unconditionally. As they swayed together under the stars, surrounded by family and friends, Hannah realized that sometimes the best love stories weren't about passion and drama. Sometimes they were about patience and healing, about finding someone who would wait for you to become ready to be loved. Mrs. Morrison, Lucas said softly. I love the sound of that, Hannah replied. Get used to it, Lucas smiled, because you're stuck with me forever now. Promise, Hannah asked. Promise, Lucas said, sealing it with a kiss that tasted like forever. In the distance, Grace's laughter rang out across the garden as she danced with her new family, and Hannah knew that this was what happily ever after really looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but built on a foundation of real love, trust, and commitment. Raymond Rico had finally gotten what he deserved. The knowledge that he had thrown away the greatest gift of his life, and that it had found its way to someone who would treasure it properly. And Hannah Morrison had gotten what she deserved, a love worth waiting for. Chapter 10. Complete Victory. Daddy, why is that man on TV crying about losing his family when he never really had one? 8-year-old Grace Morrison asked this question while sitting in Lucas's lap, watching a news report about Raymond Rico's latest parole hearing denial. It had been 2 years since Hannah's wedding to Lucas, and Grace was now a confident second grader who barely remembered a time when Lucas wasn't her father. On the screen, Raymond was sobbing, claiming he'd been destroyed by a vindictive ex-wife, and begging for a chance to reconnect with his daughter before it's too late. Hannah Morrison, now 2 years married to Lucas and expecting twins, muted the television with disgust. The sight of Raymond playing victim for the cameras filled her with cold satisfaction rather than anger. Let him cry for the world to see. Everyone who mattered knew the truth. Because some people never learn to take responsibility for their choices, sweetheart, Hannah said, adjusting her position on the sofa as one of the twins kicked enthusiastically. That man made decisions that hurt people, and now he's facing the consequences. But he keeps saying I'm his daughter, Grace said, her face scrunched with confusion. Why does he think that when I already have a daddy? Lucas kissed the top of Grace's head. Because he helped create you, princess. But that doesn't make him your father. Being a father means taking care of someone you love every single day, not just sharing DNA. Grace nodded solemnly. At 8 years old, she was remarkably wise about family dynamics, probably because she'd been surrounded by genuine love and security her entire conscious life. She had no memory of Raymond beyond that terrifying day when she was 5, and to her, Lucas had always been her father. Well, I'm glad he's not my daddy, Grace said firmly. Real daddies don't make their children's mommies cry. Hannah and Lucas exchanged a look over Grace's head. Their daughter had inherited Hannah's intelligence and Lucas's emotional wisdom, creating a formidable combination. She excelled in school, spoke 3 languages, and had already shown an aptitude for business that suggested she might one day run James Industries. Grace, why don't you go practice piano while Mommy and I talk? Lucas suggested. Can I play the new song for the babies? Grace asked, patting Hannah's belly gently. Of course, sweetheart. I think they'd love to hear it. After Grace skipped out of the room, Lucas turned to Hannah with concern. How are you feeling about the parole hearing coverage? Honestly, vindicated, Hannah said without hesitation. Look at him, Lucas. 5 years in prison and he still doesn't understand what he did wrong. He's still painting himself as the victim. The parole board saw right through it, Lucas reminded her. Denied again, unanimous decision. He'll be eligible again in 3 years, but given his record, he'll never get out early, Hannah finished. And by the time he serves his full sentence, Grace will be 18 and able to make her own decisions about contact. Lucas moved closer to Hannah on the sofa, his hand resting on her belly where their twins were active. Speaking of Grace's decisions, she asked me something yesterday that I wanted to discuss with you. What kind of something? She wants to legally change her last name. Hannah looked surprised. But she's already Grace Morrison. We changed it when I adopted her legally after our marriage. No, she wants to drop Rico from her birth certificate entirely. She asked if there was a way to make Lucas Morrison her biological father on paper. Hannah felt tears spring to her eyes. She said that? She said she doesn't want any connection to Raymond left in her official records. She wants her birth certificate to reflect the truth, that I'm her real father in every way that matters. What did you tell her? I told her that we'd look into it, but that no matter what any paper says, she's my daughter and I'm her father forever. Hannah reached for Lucas's hand, marveling as she always did at this man who had made their broken family whole. She's right, you know. You are her biological father in every way that matters. You've been there for every milestone, every achievement, every scraped knee and bad dream. And I always will be. The peaceful moment was interrupted by Grace's piano playing floating in from the music room, a beautiful melody she'd composed herself and dedicated to her baby siblings. The music was complex and emotional, far beyond what most 8-year-olds could create. She's remarkable, Lucas said softly. She's ours, Hannah replied, the possessive pride in her voice unmistakable. Over the past 2 years, their life had been everything Hannah had never dared dream of. Lucas had proven to be not just a wonderful husband, but an extraordinary father to Grace. He'd attended every school event, coached her soccer team, helped with homework, and created traditions that would last a lifetime. The business merger of James Industries and Morrison Global had been seamless, creating an empire that dominated multiple industries. Hannah ran the day-to-day operations while Lucas focused on international expansion, and their professional partnership was as strong as their personal one. "Hannah," Lucas said suddenly, "there's something else I need to tell you about Raymond." "What now?" "My lawyers received some interesting information yesterday. Apparently, Raymond's ex-wife Aria wants to meet with us." Hannah stiffened. "Aria? Why?" "She's getting remarried to a very wealthy businessman, and she wants to ensure that Raymond has no legal claim to her children. She's offering to testify about his abandonment and manipulation if it will help strengthen our case for terminating his parental rights to Grace. After all these years, she wants to help us. Apparently, she's realized what kind of man Raymond really is. Her new fiancé had him investigated and found some disturbing information about Raymond's behavior since his incarceration." "What kind of information?" "Letters to other inmates' former partners, trying to manipulate them into providing money or assistance. He's been using the same tactics he used on you, finding vulnerable people and exploiting their emotions." Hannah shook her head in disgust, but not surprise. Once a predator, always a predator. Aria wants to make sure he can never hurt another family the way he hurt hers. And ours. "Set up the meeting," Hannah said decisively. "If Aria's testimony can help us cut Raymond out of Grace's life permanently, I want to hear what she has to say." That evening, as Hannah tucked Grace into bed, her daughter looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mommy, when the babies come, will they have the same last name as me?" "Of course, sweetheart. You're all Morrisons." "Good. I want us all to match." Grace paused thoughtfully. "And Mommy, when I grow up and have my own family, I want to be like you and Daddy." "What do you mean?" "I want to choose someone who loves me like Daddy loves you. Someone who makes me laugh and keeps me safe and never lies to me." Hannah felt her heart overflow. "That's exactly what you deserve, Grace. Someone who sees how incredible you are and never takes it for granted. Like how Daddy saw how incredible you are. Yes, sweetheart, exactly like that." Later that night, as Hannah and Lucas lay in bed, feeling the twins move and listening to Grace's soft breathing through the baby monitor, they still kept in her room. At her request, she wanted to make sure she could hear if the babies needed anything. Hannah reflected on how completely her life had transformed. "Lucas," she said softly, do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if Raymond had been a different kind of man? If he'd actually loved me and Grace?" Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, number. Because if Raymond had been different, you might never have needed to build the walls that protected you until you were ready to trust again. You might have settled for ordinary love instead of waiting for extraordinary love. You think what we have is extraordinary? Hannah, what we have survived everything Raymond threw at us, overcame every obstacle, and grew stronger with every challenge. We didn't just fall in love. We chose each other every single day for years before we got married. That's not ordinary. That's once in a lifetime." Hannah turned to face her husband in the darkness. "I love you, Lucas Morrison. Thank you for waiting for me to be ready to love you back." "Thank you for being worth waiting for," Lucas replied, kissing her softly. 6 months later, Hannah gave birth to healthy twins, a boy they named Marcus after Hannah's father, and a girl they named Ruth after Lucas's grandmother. Grace was completely enchanted with her baby siblings, taking her role as big sister very seriously, and 3 months after that, Raymond Rico's parental rights to Grace were officially terminated based on abandonment, endangerment, and testimony from multiple witnesses about his pattern of manipulation and abuse. Grace Morrison was legally and officially only Lucas's daughter. On the day the court order was finalized, Hannah sat in her garden watching Lucas teach Grace to change baby Marcus's diaper while little Ruth slept peacefully in her carrier. The sight filled her with such complete contentment that she had to remind herself it was real. This was her life now. This chaos of laughter and love, of business meetings and bedtime stories, of a man who had proven his devotion through years of patience, and a daughter who had never known anything but security and adoration. Raymond Rico had gotten exactly what he deserved, a lifetime of regret over losing the greatest gift he'd ever been offered. And Hannah Morrison had gotten exactly what she deserved, a love story worth waiting for, a family built on truth and trust, and the certainty that some fairy tales really do come true. But only for people brave enough to believe they deserve them. As Grace's laughter echoed across the garden and Lucas smiled at her with eyes full of love, Hannah knew that she had finally, completely, and utterly triumphed. The end.